You've walked that same creek a dozen times. You come back to the truck with a 5-gallon bucket that weighs 40 pounds, you're proud of it, and then you get home, you hose everything off on the driveway, and the magic drains right out of them. Milky quartz. Every one of them. Maybe a piece of stained chert that looked like carnelian when it was wet. And somewhere in your garage right now there's a box or a coffee can of stones you've never been able to name, sitting there for years quietly bothering you. I want to tell you something, and I want you to actually believe it. That's not bad luck, that's not a bad creek. Nobody ever taught you what the ground looks like when a gem is close. Gems are not rare, not the way people think. What's rare is knowing what one looks like before it's cut. The stone in the jewelry store window has been sawn, ground on a wheel, polished on a lap, and lit from underneath. The same stone in the gravel is a dull, frosted, greasy-looking pebble that looks like something the dog would chew on. That is exactly why everybody walks past it. So here's what you're getting in the next 20 minutes. 7 signs that a river is holding valuable gem material. What each one physically looks like when you're standing on the bar, the geological reason it works, the exact place on the river to apply it, the 5-second field checks that separate the real thing from the imposter, and honest value ranges for what good material actually brings. Stay to the end, because the 7th sign is the one almost nobody reads, and it isn't in the water at all. Before we go further, do me a favor. If you've ever carried a stone home in your pocket, dead certain it was something, and it turned out to be nothing, tell me in the comments what you thought you had. Now here's the foundation, and if you understand this part, the 7 signs stop being a list and start being common sense. A river is not a place where gems live. A river is a machine that sorts them. Every gem in a creek came out of hard rock somewhere upstream. A pegmatite, a lava flow, a metamorphic band, a vein. And it got there because rain, frost, and time chewed that rock apart and let the water carry the pieces downhill. So, 3 properties decide what survives the trip. Hardness, which is how well a stone resists being scratched and sanded to nothing. Toughness, which is whether it shatters when it slams into a boulder. And density, which is how heavy it is for its size. Quartz sits at 7 on the Mohs scale and weighs about 2, 65 times the same volume of water. Garnet runs 7 to 7, 5 and about 3, 5 to 4. 3 corundum, that's ruby and sapphire, same mineral, different color, is a 9 and about 4. 0. Diamond is a 10. Jade is only about 6 to 7, but it's tougher than almost anything on Earth, which is why it survives 100 miles of river when a beautiful crystal of soft mineral turns to powder in the first mile. So the gems that make it are hard, tough, and heavy. And heavy is the key word. Moving water can only carry a heavy particle as long as it's moving fast. The second that water slows down, behind a boulder, at the tail of a rapid, on the inside of a bend, over a rough bedrock ledge, the heavy stuff drops out first and the light stuff keeps going. Gold does exactly this, and gold is the yardstick everybody knows. Gems do it too, just not as dramatically, because a sapphire at 4. 0 isn't a slug of gold at 19. 3, that means gem concentration sits slightly farther downstream and slightly higher in the gravel than a gold streak would. Every sign that follows is just a way of reading where the water lost its grip. Sign number 1, and this one shocks people because it costs nothing and takes 10 seconds. Read the variety of the gravel before you read a single stone. Get down on one knee on a dry bar and look at a square foot of cobbles. If every rounded rock is the same gray sandstone or the same tan limestone, that river is draining one boring rock type and you are wasting a Saturday. But if you see a jumble, dark green pieces, white vein quartz, speckled granite, black basalt, a chunk of something red, a piece with mica flashing in it, that river is draining many different geologic units, and one of them might be the one that matters. What you're looking for specifically is the odd man out. 3 or 4 cobbles in a whole bar that don't match anything else. In the trade, those are called exotic clasts, and they are a fingerprint of a rock body upstream that the river has just started to open up. Where do you apply it? The head of a gravel bar on the inside of a bend, where the water first loses speed coming around the curve, and the crease where that bar meets the bank. That's where the coarse mixed material piles up. The beginner's mistake here is picking up the prettiest wet stone in the first 15 feet and spending 3 hours on one spot. You're not hunting a stone yet, you're auditioning the river. Walk 200 yards a bar, look at the variety, and only then decide whether to dig. And if the gravel is boring, leave. That's the fastest way to stop filling buckets with quartz. Which brings us straight to the next sign. Because once you know the river carries mixed material, you need to find the exact seam where the heavy fraction settled. Sign number 2. Black sand stringers and red sand. This is the single most reliable visual clue on any gem-bearing river in America, and most weekend hunters walk right over it because it looks like dirt. On a dry bar, look for thin, dark ribbons in the sand, black to steel gray, sometimes only a 1/4 inch thick, laid in curving lines like the grain in a piece of wood. That's mostly magnetite and ilmenite, iron-heavy minerals with a density around 5. 2, and they get deposited exactly where the water dropped its heaviest load. Pull a magnet out of your pocket, put it in a plastic bag, and drag it through. If it grabs a beard of black grains, you're standing on a natural concentrate. Now look for red. Fine ruby red to wine-colored grains mixed in with the black are almost always garnet. And garnet is the cheapest, most common member of the heavy crowd. Where garnet and magnetite ride together, sapphire, ruby, spinel, zircon, and topaz ride with them. Because the river doesn't sort by value, it sorts by weight. On the Missouri River bars downstream of Helena, Montana, that's the exact signature commercial operations followed for over a century. And those bars have produced sapphires by the hundreds of thousands of carats. Most of it pale, but some of it fine blue and cornflower material that, cut and clean, runs well into the hundreds of dollars a carat. Where do you apply it? Tail out of a riffle where fast water flattens into a pool, the upstream side of a boulder that's been sitting in the current for a century, and the base of a gravel bar right where it meets bedrock or clay. The beginner's mistake is shoveling the loose top layer. That top 18 inches gets rolled and rewashed every flood. You want the bottom of the gravel column, the last 6 inches sitting on something solid. Dig to the black line, not to the pretty rock. Quick pause here, and then we go right back to it. Everything I just walked you through and dozens more signs like it is inside the Rockhound's Compass, 2026 edition. 50 field-tested ways to tell a gem from a pretty rock before you ever leave the creek. What each stone actually looks like in the rough, the crust and matrix around it, the ground that has to be there for it to exist at all, and the quick checks you can run with a knife and a piece of tile. Links in the description. QR codes on screen. This is the season you stop filling buckets with quartz. Sign number 3, exposed bedrock and every crack in it. When you're walking a creek and the gravel suddenly thins out and you can see the actual bones of the river, a slab, a ledge, a reef of solid rock running across the flow, stop walking. That's a natural trap. Here's the mechanism in one sentence. Heavy particles work their way down through the gravel every time a flood shakes the bed, and they keep sinking until they hit something they can't get through. Bedrock is that something. So the crevices, the cracks, the little potholes drilled by spinning stones, the moss-filled seams at the base of a ledge, that's where 100 years of heavy material has been quietly accumulating. Pay special attention to cracks that run across the current rather than with it, because those are the ones that catch. And learn one more thing that separates people who find material from people who don't. False bedrock. A hard-packed layer of blue-gray clay or a cemented hardpan layer inside the gravel will stop heavies just as well as stone will. If your shovel hits a sticky clay layer 3 feet down, don't punch through it and keep going. Clean the top of it. That surface is a shelf, and gems sit on shelves. The beginner's mistake here is bringing the wrong tools. You cannot work a crevice with a shovel. A flathead screwdriver, a stiff brush, a crevice hook, and a spoon will outproduce a shovel 10-to-1 on bedrock. And on public land where collecting is allowed, that kind of handwork also keeps you well inside the rules for casual, non-commercial collecting, which matters more every year. Now, once you've got a pan or a bucket of concentrate off that bedrock, you have to be able to spot the gem inside it. And that's the sign nobody teaches. Sign number 4, the wrong luster. This is the one that changes people's hunting forever. In a river bar, every quartz pebble, every chert pebble, Every piece of sandstone has been sanded by moving grit into the same dull, chalky, uniform surface. A gem-quality stone does not look like that. It looks wrong. Corundum, ruby and sapphire, is a 9 in hardness, so the river sand can barely touch it. It keeps a slightly waxy, greasy, almost soapy shine, even bone dry, and it often keeps a shape. A flattened barrel, a stubby, six-sided outline, sometimes with faint parallel lines running around it, like the grain on a barrel stave. Jade shows up as a smooth, heavy, olive to dark green pebble with a surface like a bar of used soap, and it rings when you tap two pieces together instead of clunking. Topaz comes as a stubby, blocky, water-clear to pale sherry pebble with an odd heft. And here's the trick that costs nothing. Dry your stones. Everything in a creek is beautiful when it's wet. Spread the handful on a dry rock in the sun for 2 minutes. The quartz goes chalky and dead. The real gem material keeps a little glow. Now let's meet the villain, because he's already in your bucket. Common white quartz is the great imposter of American rock hounding. More people have hauled home more pounds of it believing it was something than any other mineral on the continent. 5-second check. Take the back edge of a steel pocket knife blade, hardness about 5.5, and try to scratch the stone in an inconspicuous spot. If the steel bites in and leaves a real groove, it's softer than 5. Oh, I must have 5. 5 at calcite, feldspar, or something not worth your afternoon. If the steel skates and leaves nothing but a gray metal smear you can rub off with your thumb, you're at 7 or above, which puts you in quartz, garnet, topaz, beryl, corundum territory. That tells you it's hard. It doesn't tell you it's valuable. Second check, and it takes 3 seconds. Hold it up to the sun and look inside. Round bubbles, perfectly round, floating in clear glassy material, mean bottle glass. Nature almost never makes a round bubble in a gemstone. River-tumbled glass has fooled more experienced people than they'll admit at the tailgate, because it frosts up beautifully and comes in gorgeous aqua and amber. Bubbles, and it's a beer bottle from 19... Look, I'll be straight with you. The reason this material doesn't stick is that a video goes by once and the creek doesn't wait for you to remember. The 50 checks in the Rockhound's compass are laid out across 5 chapters and ordered so you can actually work them in the field. Book open in one hand, stone in the other, kneeling on the gravel. If you've been watching videos like this one thinking there's something out there you keep walking past, that's the move. Link is in the description below, QR code is on screen. Make this the year you finally know what you're holding. Sign number 5, the tributary that runs a different color and the contact line it's telling you about. Every gem in that river came from a specific rock body, and your job is to walk upstream until you find the door it came out of. Here's how you find it without a geology degree. Where a side creek joins the main river, look at 3 things. Look at the water color after a rain. If the feeder runs milky green or orange-brown while the main stem runs clear, it's cutting different material. Look at the gravel in the first 100 yards below the junction because the feeder dumps its own rock type there in a fan. And look at the cut bank of that feeder for a contact line. A place where 2 visibly different rocks meet. One dark and one light, one layered and one massive. That contact is where hot fluids traveled and where minerals crystallized. In plain English, gems form where something changed. Dark green, slick, sometimes shiny rock that feels a little soapy is serpentinite. And serpentine bodies are the source rock for nephrite jade in places like the Big Sur coast of California and the drainages of central Wyoming. Coarse granite with crystals the size of your thumb, that's pegmatite, the last, slowest, wettest part of a granite to freeze. And it's the source for aquamarine, tourmaline, topaz, and giant flawless garnets. Marble bands next to darker metamorphic rock are the classic host for ruby and spinel. And that's the exact geology behind the Cowie Valley near Franklin, North Carolina, where creek gravels have been giving up rubies and sapphires to hand diggers for more than a century. Some of it fine enough that clean, well-colored cut stones from that region have brought several hundred to a few $1,000s a carat. Apply it at the junction, then work upstream 200 yards at a time, checking gravel variety at each stop. The beginner's mistake is hunting downstream because the walking is easier. Gems get smaller and more beat up the farther they travel. Upstream is where they get bigger and where the trail ends at the source. Let me tell you about Kevin Kennard because his story is the whole point of this video. Labor Day weekend 2020, Crater of Diamonds State Park in Murfreesboro, Arkansas. A plowed field the public is allowed to dig in, where you keep what you find. Kennard was a bank branch manager from Arkansas. He'd been there before as a kid on a school trip. He picked up a brown, dull, marble-sized stone off the ground in plain sight, put it in a bag with everything else he'd collected, and thought about it exactly as much as you'd think about a pebble. It looked, in his own words, like a piece of crystal or glass. He carried that bag around and eventually walked into the park's identification office almost as an afterthought, mostly because his friends were getting their finds checked. It was a 9.7 carat brown diamond. At the time, the second largest ever found at the park, since the state took it over in 1972. Not buried, not deep. Sitting on the dirt where thousands of people had walked. Now hear the lesson, because it's not get lucky. Rough diamond doesn't sparkle. It's got a soft, oily, almost soapy shine and a rounded, slightly greasy look, and it does not stand out. That is exactly the pain I opened with. The box in the garage, the coffee can of stones you never identified. Kennard nearly became that story. The only reason he isn't is that he handed it to somebody who knew what to look for. Every one of us has walked past our own version of that stone. Sign number 6. Fresh scars. A river is not a fixed thing, and this is where most rockhounds lose years. If you hunt the same bar every August, you are hunting a spot that has been picked over by every person who came before you since the last high water. What you want are the changes. After spring runoff or after any big storm event, the river tears into new ground and reloads. Look for raw, undercut banks with tree roots hanging in the air, brand new gravel piles that weren't there last season, fallen trees with a fresh gravel tail behind them, and clean unweathered cobbles with no algae, no moss, no lichen, and no sun bleaching on top. Bright, clean rock on a bar means that material moved recently. That's the fresh page. The mechanism is simple. A flood picks up the whole bed, mixes it, and resorts it, which means gems that had been buried for decades under 6 feet of overburden can end up sitting on the surface of a new bar. Timing beats technique. One trip to a river 3 weeks after high water is worth 6 trips in low water in the same year, and go carefully. Banks that are freshly undercut are unstable, water is colder and stronger than it looks, and no stone on this earth is worth a bad step. Which brings us to the 7th sign, the one I promised you, and the one that separates people who find gems from people who find rocks, because it isn't in the water at all. Sign number 7, the old river that isn't there anymore. Stop looking at your feet and look up at the valley walls. Rivers cut down over geologic time. The channel that's running today used to run higher, sometimes 20 feet higher, sometimes 200. And every time it dropped, it left its old gravel bed stranded on the hillside as a flat shelf, a bench, a terrace. That stranded gravel is called a terrace deposit or bench deposit. And here's why it matters. That ancient channel had thousands or tens of thousands of years to concentrate heavy minerals, while the modern channel has only had whatever time has passed since the last flood scoured it. Older gravel means richer gravel. Almost every serious historic gem and gold operation in the American West worked benches, not the live stream. So what does it look like? You're looking for rounded, water-worn cobbles sitting somewhere water couldn't possibly put them today, 30 feet above the water in a road cut, in a cattle pond bank, in the wall of an old gravel pit, along a flat farm terrace above the floodplain. The gravel is often stained rusty orange or reddish from iron, sometimes cemented into a hard mass you have to break with a hammer, and the cobbles are usually more rounded than the ones down in the creek. If you see rounded river cobbles in a bank where there is no river, you have found an old channel. Work the base of that gravel layer where it sits on clay or bedrock, and work exposures where a modern gully is cut through it. The proof is everywhere. The sapphire benches above the Missouri and Montana, The high gravels above nearly every historic gem creek in the southeast and the terrace deposits that fed some of the great diamond fields of southern Africa. Nobody reads this sign. 99 people out of 100 put on their boots, wade into the water, and never once look at the hillside behind them. 2 cautions. Terraces are frequently on private ground, so ask permission or stick to public land where casual collecting is allowed. And the imposter follows you up there too. Those old cemented gravels are absolutely loaded with milky quartz, and when it's iron-stained, it looks like a warm, honey-colored gem. Run the same 2 checks. Steel blade. Does it skate or bite? And drag it across a piece of unglazed ceramic. The back of a bathroom tile works fine. Quartz and real gem material leave no streak at all, or a faint white one. If it leaves a colored powder line, you've got something softer and almost always less valuable. And heft it. Put a known quartz pebble in one hand and your candidate in the same size in the other. Corundum, garnet, and zircon feel noticeably heavier for their size. Your hands are a density meter and they're free. So which of these have you found before, even if you didn't know what it was at the time? The black sand stringer, the greasy pebble that kept its shine when it dried, the rounded cobbles up in a road cut? Tell me in the comments, because somebody reading them is standing on the same kind of ground and doesn't know it yet. Here's where you are now compared to 25 minutes ago. You can walk onto a bar and judge the whole river in 10 seconds by the variety of its gravel. You can find the heavy line, the black sand and the red garnet sand, and know that's where the weight settled. You can read bedrock and false bedrock as a trap instead of an obstacle. You can dry a handful of stones and spot the one with the wrong luster. You can walk up a side creek and find the contact where 2 rocks meet. You know that timing after high water beats technique. And you know to look up at the terrace nobody else is looking at. You also know the 2 checks that killed the imposter every single time. The steel blade and the round bubble. That box in your garage? Pull it out this week and run those checks on every stone in it. Some of them will be quartz. That's fine. That's how everybody starts and there's no shame in it. But you're not guessing anymore. If you want to keep sharpening this, stick around the channel, because next time, we're going to get into reading the rough crust on the outside of a stone, the skin that tells you what's inside before you ever cut it. Subscribe if you found this useful, and I mean that for a practical reason. The next time you walk a gravel bar, you don't want to be the person who stepped over something worth more per gram than gold and kept walking. Take your time out there, watch the banks, and dry your stones before you decide. Good hunting, Rockhound. I'll see you on the next one.